My golden child brother stole and wrecked my truck, and my parents blamed me. So I got him arrested, and now they're begging me to save him. I'll keep the backstory short because it matters, but I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me. My name's Damon Mercer. I'm 34. I run heavy equipment for the county road crew, graders, compactors, the occasional crawler dozer when the state contracts come through. It's not a job people romanticize, but it pays consistently, it keeps me outdoors, and I'm good at it. I've never needed more than that. What I did need, the one thing I poured every spare hour and every overtime dollar into for a full decade, was my truck. 2003 diesel, single cab, long bed, pulled it out of a salvage yard when I was 24 for $800 and a handshake. The frame was solid but everything else was either rusted through or missing entirely. I didn't care. I knew what it could be. I rebuilt the engine from a crate motor I sourced from a guy in Tennessee. Swapped the suspension. Fabricated the exhaust stack myself using a borrowed welder in 3 weekends I'll never get back. Had the cab resprayed a deep navy blue by a guy named Terrence who worked out of his garage and did better work than any body shop in the county. 10 years. Not 10 years of casual weekend tinkering. 10 years of real, deliberate, obsessive building. Parts sourced from 4 states. A binder full of receipts I kept not for taxes but because every page represented a decision I made to keep going when it would have been easier to quit. Everyone in town who knew me, knew that truck. And everyone knew the rule without me having to post it on a sign. Nobody drives it. Not my buddies, not my parents, and especially not my younger brother Silas. I want to be clear about Silas before I go further, because the way my family tells it, he's always been misunderstood. Sensitive, still figuring things out, 27 years old and perpetually in the process of finding himself, which, in practice, meant my parents Roy and Donna had spent the better part of 3 decades finding excuses for whatever he broke, whoever he let down, and whatever job he just walked away from. Silas is charming. Genuinely, he can walk into a room and make everyone feel like they're the most interesting person he's ever met. That gift got him out of more trouble than I can count. He'd asked to drive the truck twice in the past year. I shut it down both times. No argument, no softening. He'd laughed it off like I was being uptight. I didn't care. The night everything came apart, I was finishing a double shift, 16 hours of compactor work on a county resurfacing project that had fallen behind schedule. Got home just past 2 a.m. Pulled into the driveway, parked my work truck and walked toward the house, and it took me a second to register what was wrong. The spot where my truck lived was empty. I went inside, straight to the hook by the back door where the keys always hung. The hook was bare. I stood there for a moment, just looking at it. I called Silas, straight to voicemail, called again, same, sent a text that just said where's my truck and watched the message sit unread for 20 minutes before I stopped watching it. I went back outside and sat on the porch steps. I wasn't panicking. I was doing the math. Silas had been at the house earlier that day. Donna had mentioned it when I checked in at noon. He knew I was working a double. He knew the house would be empty all night. Around 4 a.m., Roy's cell went off inside. I heard it through the screen door, one of those middle of the night rings that cuts through sleep differently than any other sound. I heard him answer, heard his voice drop low. A long pause. Then, how bad? Another pause. Okay, don't say anything else. I'll handle it. The screen door opened 5 minutes later. Roy stood on the porch in his robe, looking older than he had the day before. He looked at me sitting on those steps and didn't seem surprised I was awake. He said, "We need to talk before the cops call you, and you need to hear me out before you do anything." That was the moment I understood. My father already knew exactly what had happened, and he already had a plan. The only question was whether I was going to be part of it. I didn't say anything, just looked at him and waited. Roy sat down on the porch railing, not next to me on the steps, across from me, like this was a negotiation and he wanted to be able to read my face. He's done that my whole life. Position himself where he can watch you react. I've learned to give him nothing. He told me what happened in that flat, efficient way he has when he's already past the emotional part and into the logistics. Silas had taken the truck out around midnight with 2 of his friends. Nobody knew where they were headed. Somewhere on Route 9, a patrol unit clocked them running well over the limit and lit them up. Silas ran, took the truck up to speeds it was never meant to handle in a panic, missed a curve, and put it into a highway barrier at enough force to fold the front end completely. Silas and the 2 friends walked away, cuts, 1 cracked rib between them. They scattered before the patrol unit caught up. By the time anyone was formally identified, they were already back in town. Roy delivered all of this like he was reading a weather report. When he finished, I asked him one question. How bad is the truck? He looked at me for a moment. It's gone, Damon. I nodded. I didn't say anything else. Roy took that as permission to continue. Here's what he needed from me, he said. The insurance company would investigate. Silas already had a reckless driving citation on his record from 2 years back. I hadn't known about that, which told me Roy had handled it quietly. Another charge wouldn't just be a fine. It would follow Silas. Roy used the phrase derail his future without a trace of irony. The solution, he explained, was straightforward. I would tell investigators that I had been driving My record was clean. No priors, no flags. The claim would process, I'd collect on the policy, and Silas would pay me back over time. He said over time with the kind of confidence that meant never. I asked him where Silas was taking the truck at midnight. Roy's expression shifted, just slightly. That's not relevant right now. It's relevant to me. Damon. His voice had that edge in it, the one that used to end conversations when I was 17. The relevant thing right now is that your brother needs you. Donna appeared in the doorway behind him in her robe, which told me she'd been awake the whole time and had been listening. She came out and sat beside Roy and looked at me with wet eyes and said the thing she always says when Silas needs something. He's still so young. He's 27 years old. But I didn't say that. What they said next, they said together, not in a coordinated way, more the way two people say something they've already agreed on privately. If I refused to cooperate, if I let this go where it was naturally going to go, they would cut me out. Not in anger, Roy clarified, in necessity. The family needed to protect itself, and someone who wouldn't participate in that protection wasn't really part of the family. Donna nodded while he said it like this was the saddest but most reasonable thing in the world. I told them I needed to think. They took that as agreement. Donna went inside to make coffee. Roy put his hand on my shoulder for exactly 1 second and then followed her in. And I sat on those steps until the sun came up, not thinking about what they'd asked me to do, but thinking about what Silas had been doing on Route 9 at midnight. The next morning I drove to the impound staging lot where the wreck was being held before processing. I know a guy who works county tow. He let me get close enough to look without touching anything. The truck was unrecognizable. Frame bent in 2 places, cab sheared on the passenger side. The engine I'd rebuilt sitting exposed and ruined. I wasn't looking at the damage though. I was looking for the registration paperwork I kept in the glove box. I found it, and wedged beneath the rear seat, half hidden under a torn floor mat, I found something else entirely. A zip tie equipment tag. Industrial orange. Serial number printed clean on both sides. The kind they bolt to heavy construction machinery before it leaves a job site. It had no business being in my truck, which meant it had every reason to tell me exactly what Silas had been doing that night. I typed the serial number into my phone right there in the impound yard, standing next to what was left of a decade of my life. The third result was a sheriff's department report filed 6 weeks prior. A Bobcat skid steer, stolen from a grading contractor's secured lot 2 counties over. The report listed the equipment tag serial number for insurance purposes. It matched the tag in my hand digit for digit. I photographed the tag from 4 angles, put it back exactly where I found it, and drove home. I told Roy that evening I was still thinking things over. He looked relieved. That was important. I needed him relaxed. I needed all of them relaxed. I want to explain something about how I operate, because people tend to assume that when someone goes quiet after being wronged, they're either processing or defeated. I'm neither. When I go quiet, I'm working. I've been that way since I was a kid. Roy always mistook it for compliance. That mistake cost him. First thing I did was the gas station on Route 9. There's only one between town and the stretch of highway where the crash happened. A small family-run place. Been there 30 years. I know the owner, Hector, casually enough to stop in without it seeming strange. Bought coffee, talked about the county resurfacing project for a few minutes, then mentioned my truck situation, kept it vague, said I was trying to piece together the timeline for insurance, asked if his parking lot camera might have caught anything that night. Hector pulled it up on his tablet without hesitation. There was Silas at 11:47 p.m., pumping gas. 2 guys with him I recognized as Corbin Wade and another one named Petro Suggs who'd been running with Silas for about a year. All 3 of them relaxed, laughing about something. Silas was wearing my truck's spare jacket I kept behind the seat. I asked Hector for a copy for insurance documentation. He forwarded it to my email before I finished my coffee. Traffic camera footage came next. I filed a public records request through the county portal, listed it as a civil matter involving my registered vehicle, which was technically accurate. Took 6 days. Got 3 clips back. Silas behind the wheel in every frame, timestamps intact, speed visible enough that anyone who knew Route 9 could see he was running hard before the barrier. Then I went after the witnesses. Corbin Wade lives 4 streets over from my parents' house. I ran into him at a gas station, not the same one, a different one closer to town. And I want to be honest, it wasn't an accident. I'd driven past his apartment twice that week waiting for a casual opening. When I saw him at the pump I pulled in, acted surprised, kept everything easy and low-key. We ended up talking in the parking lot for 40 minutes. I bought him a beer from the cooler inside. Let him think I was just venting about the insurance headache. Let him think I had no idea who'd been driving. Corbin, feeling safe, told me everything. How Silas had been talking about taking the truck for weeks. How the plan that night was to make a run out to some warehouse property off the county line and be back before sunrise. How Silas was the one driving from the moment they left town, No question. I was recording from the second minute of that conversation. One party consent state. Did the same with Petro 3 days later at a different location. Independent account. Same core facts. Silas driving. Silas running from the patrol unit. Silas's call to scatter when the truck went into the barrier. The Instagram piece came together on its own timeline. Corbin had gone live during the joyride. I'd seen the notification come through that night before my phone died on shift. Never opened it. Silas had made him delete it the morning after. What neither of them considered was that I followed Corbin's account, and Instagram's cache data doesn't fully clear from a device on its own schedule. I ran a recovery app on my own phone, pulled a 41-second fragment of the stream directly from cached memory. Silas at the wheel, his voice, the speedometer reading behind him. Clear enough to matter. Corbin forgot I'd ever been in his follower list. That single oversight unraveled everything he and Silas thought they'd buried. I cross-referenced the stolen equipment tag against county theft records and found 4 more reports spanning 8 months. All construction sites, all mid-range machinery, all unsolved. And then I started asking myself a different question. Silas hadn't held a steady job in 2 years, but he'd been paying cash for things. New boots, bar tabs, a 4-day trip somewhere he'd been vague about. I pulled county property records looking for anything in the family's name. Found it in 20 minutes. A storage unit registered under Roy's name 18 months ago, listed at a facility 12 miles outside town. I drove out, noted the unit number, and left without stopping. 2 days later, I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner and excused myself to use the bathroom. On the way back through the hallway I passed the shared family tablet on the side table. The one Roy used for streaming and Donna used for recipes. It was unlocked. I opened the message threads, scrolled back 4 months. Roy to Silas. Move the other piece before Tuesday. Don't use the truck this time. Silas back. Already handled. Relax. I set the tablet down exactly as I found it and went back to the dinner table. I'd started this thinking my brother had stolen my truck on a reckless night and my parents were covering for him out of blind habit. But sitting at that table, watching Roy cut his food and Donna ask if anyone wanted more bread, I understood something colder. This wasn't a cover-up that started the night of the crash. My father had been running something with Silas for over a year. And the ask, the demand that I lie to investigators, that I take the fall, wasn't about protecting Silas from a joyride charge. It was about protecting all of it, every piece of it. And they'd handed me the perfect reason to look directly at Detective Morel Cross. I didn't go to the local sheriff's substation. That might seem like an odd choice, but I'd grown up in this town. I knew which deputies drank at the same bar as Roy. I knew which sergeant had coached Silas in Little League. Small towns aren't corrupt necessarily, they're just tangled. And I couldn't afford to hand this to someone who might make a phone call before they made a file. So I looked up the Multi-County Equipment Theft Task Force instead. It took about 20 minutes of searching through county commission meeting minutes posted online, the kind of public record nobody reads, before I found a name attached to the investigation. Detective Morel Cross, Major Crimes Unit, assigned as lead on a string of construction site thefts spanning 3 counties over the past 10 months. I called the number listed, got her voicemail. Her message was short, name, rank, leave a detailed message or don't bother. I liked that immediately. I left her 60 seconds, told her I had physical evidence, digital footage, recorded witness statements, and a storage unit location tied to the suspect in her theft cases. Told her the suspect had recently been involved in a vehicle incident that had brought the evidence into my possession. Left my name and number. Kept my voice level throughout because there was nothing to be emotional about. The work was done. This was just delivery. She called back in under 2 hours. We met at a diner in Callaway, 2 towns over, the following morning. I got there early, took a booth in the back corner, ordered coffee. She came in exactly on time, late 40s, wore her badge on a belt clip, carried a legal notepad and nothing else. She looked like someone who'd stopped being impressed by things a long time ago, which was exactly what I needed. I put the folder on the table before she'd finished sitting down. Printed photographs of the equipment tag, cross-referenced against the theft report filed 6 weeks prior. The gas station footage, time-stamped, with Silas's face clear in 3 frames. Traffic camera stills, 4 of them. Silas at the wheel, speed contextually obvious from road position and lane. The USB drive containing the recovered Instagram fragment, 41 seconds, labeled with the date and source. Printed transcripts of both recorded conversations, with the audio files also on the drive. The screenshot of Roy's text to Silas about moving the other piece before Tuesday. The county property record showing the storage unit registered in Roy's name. Morel went through everything without speaking. She turned pages at a steady pace, didn't react visibly to any of it, made small notations on her legal pad. When she finished, she set the folder down and looked at me directly. You understand this implicates your father as well as your brother? Yes. And you compiled all of this yourself? No attorney involved, no third party? Correct. She studied me for a moment. Most people in your position either blow this up emotionally and make it messy, or they sit on it out of loyalty. You did neither. Why? I thought about it honestly before I answered. Because they asked me to commit fraud to cover a crime I didn't commit. That made the loyalty question pretty straightforward. She nodded once. Then she asked me if anyone had applied pressure on me directly to stay quiet. I pulled out my phone and played her the voicemail Roy had left me 4 days prior. His voice, measured and deliberate. Whatever you think you know, son, you need to let this go. For everyone's sake. Morel wrote something on her notepad and circled it. She took everything. The folder, the USB drive, the voicemail forwarded to her department email before we left the table. She told me the storage unit would require a warrant and that I should continue behaving normally around my family without indicating anything had changed. She didn't tell me a timeline. She didn't tell me what the warrant would find. She gave me her direct number, shook my hand, and left. The warrant came through in 4 days. I know this because Morel sent me a single text. Storage unit processed. You were right about the scope. I didn't ask for details. I went back to work. Showed up to Sunday dinner that week same as always. Ate Donna's pot roast. Listened to Silas talk about some business idea he'd had. Watched Roy pour himself a second glass of sweet tea. The following Sunday I was back at the same table. Same chairs. Same food. Silas was mid-sentence about something when we all heard the vehicles pull into the driveway. 2 of them. I heard the doors before anyone else reacted. Roy's head came up first. Then Silas went still in a way I'd never seen him go still before, like something in him already knew, before the knock even landed on the front door, that the time he'd been borrowing had finally run out. Nobody moved for a full 3 seconds after the knock. Roy set his fork down. Donna's hand stopped mid-reach toward the bread basket. Silas was still half-turned in his chair from whatever he'd been saying, and his face had gone through about 4 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds before settling into something I can only describe as a mask. That thing he did when he was calculating how to handle a room. I kept eating. The knock came again. Roy pushed back from the table and walked to the front door with the careful, unhurried movement of a man trying not to look like he was bracing himself. I heard the door open, heard Morel Cross's voice, calm, professional, the same tone she'd used in the diner. She asked if Silas Mercer was present in the home. Silas heard his name and was on his feet before Roy could respond. He looked at me across the table, not at the door, not at Roy, directly at me, and I watched the calculation in his face collapse into something raw when I didn't look away or offer him anything. He said, "You did this." Not a question. He said it the way people say things they already know are true but need to hear out loud once before everything changes. I didn't respond. 2 deputies came through the hallway with Morel. Silas took exactly 1 step back before he caught himself and stopped, because Silas had always been smart enough to know when a situation was past the point of a quick exit. He let them cuff him without physically resisting, but his mouth ran the entire time. Denial first, then a pivot to demanding a lawyer, then one more look at me over his shoulder as they moved him toward the door. "You burned your own family down, Damon, over a truck." I picked up my glass and took a drink. Morel asked Roy to step outside for questioning. Roy went without a word, which told me more about his state of mind than anything he could have said. He was experienced enough in this, in managing situations, managing people, to know that talking at the door of your house with your son being arrested in the front yard was not the moment to start explaining yourself. Donna stood in the kitchen doorway through all of it. She didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't move. She watched Silas go through the front door and Roy walk out behind him, and then she looked at me still sitting at the table, and I could see her trying to locate something in my face. Regret, hesitation, anything she could work with. There was nothing there for her to find. I finished what was on my plate, carried it to the sink, rinsed it, set it in the rack, picked up my jacket from the chair back and walked out. The next 10 days were noise. Silas was formally charged, receiving stolen property, conspiracy, and fleeing a law enforcement officer from the night of the crash. The task force connected him to all 4 theft sites across the 3 counties once they had the storage unit inventory and his phone records subpoenaed. Roy was charged separately. 2 counts of aiding and abetting, 1 count of money laundering tied to the landscaping business he'd supposedly wound down 2 years prior. He'd been running sale proceeds through its dormant accounts. Investigators found 18 months of transactions. Both of them were released on bond. Neither could leave the state. The family calls started immediately. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in 2 years calling to ask what happened, what I'd done, whether I understood what this meant for the family name. An aunt left a voicemail using words I won't repeat here. A cousin named Wren, Roy's niece from his sister's side, who'd grown up watching Silas operate and had never once bought into the Golden Child performance, sent me a text that was just 1 word. Good. I saved that one. Donna called every day for 3 days. I let all of it go to voicemail. Not out of cruelty. I just wasn't ready to have that conversation until I was certain of exactly what I was going to say. When I finally answered on the 4th day, she'd clearly been waiting and had her words prepared. She went through all of it. The history, the sacrifices, the years she and Roy had given to both of us equally. She believed that, I think, which is almost impressive. She talked about Roy's health, about what prison would do to a man his age, about Silas never having had the same advantages I had, which landed somewhere between revisionist history and delusion. She talked about family being the only thing that lasts. She cried at certain points. She recovered and kept going. She had more material than I expected, and she used all of it. I let her finish completely, every word. When the line went quiet, I asked her, "Mom, I need you to listen to me carefully. Are you listening?" She said yes, and I told her exactly what I'd decided. Not what she wanted to hear, what I'd actually decided. The moment I found that equipment tag in the wreckage of my truck and understood with complete clarity that the family I thought I was protecting had never once extended me the same consideration. Every word I said to her on that phone was something I'd already made peace with long before she called. The only question left was whether she'd be able to hear it. I told her I wasn't recanting anything. I told her the evidence existed independent of me now. It had from the moment I handed it to Morel Cross. My statement was one piece of a case built on footage, recorded conversations, physical inventory from the storage unit, and 18 months of financial transactions. Even if I walked into the sheriff's department tomorrow and claimed I'd fabricated everything, the case wouldn't move an inch. I wasn't the foundation. I was just the person who poured it. I told her I understood she was scared for Roy. I told her I understood that what she was feeling was real and that I wasn't dismissing it. But I also told her that the night Roy sat across from me on that porch and asked me to commit fraud, not to protect his son from a bad decision, but to protect an ongoing criminal operation he'd been actively running. He made a choice, and Silas made his choice the moment he put his hand on my keys. I told her nobody handed them those choices. They made them freely, over a long period of time, with full knowledge of the consequences if it ever came apart. Then I told her I loved her. I meant it, and I hung up. Silas pleaded guilty 4 months later. His attorney negotiated it down. 18 months in county, 3 years probation, full restitution to the 5 construction companies that had filed theft reports. The restitution figure was significant enough that it would follow him for a long time regardless of anything else. He didn't reach out to me before the plea. I didn't expect him to. Roy took a plea on the laundering charge, substantial fine, suspended sentence with conditions, and his business license permanently revoked, not just the landscaping shell, but any business license in the state, indefinitely. No prison time, which I know is what Donna had been most afraid of. He came out of it marked in every way that matters in a small town without serving a single day. I've been told by Ren that he barely leaves the house now, that he and Donna have stopped attending their church because he can't stand the way people look at him. I don't feel satisfaction about that specifically, but I don't feel guilt either. I feel nothing about it, which is its own kind of answer. The insurance paid out the actual cash value on my policy. It wasn't enough to replace what I'd built. It never would be, because what I'd built couldn't be priced by a claims adjuster working from a depreciation table. It was 10 years of specific decisions and accumulated knowledge and hours that belonged to me and nothing else. The payout was fair by the policy's terms. I put it in savings and didn't touch it for 3 months while I figured out what I actually wanted to do with it. I'm not a hero in this town. I want to be clear about that. People don't buy me drinks or stop me in parking lots to tell me I did the right thing. Mostly people find the whole situation uncomfortable, because it forces a kind of reckoning that small towns generally prefer to avoid. The question of what you owe your family versus what you owe yourself when those two things are in direct opposition. Most people, when they imagine themselves in my position, don't like the answer they come up with, so they keep their distance from me instead. That's fine. I've never needed an audience. Ren checks in occasionally. We weren't close growing up, just cousins at the same holiday table, nodding at each other across the room. Now she's probably the only member of my extended family I'd answer a call from without hesitation. She watched Silas operate for 2 decades the same way I did, from the inside, without the protection of being the favorite. She understood what it cost to stop pretending. A month ago I bought a frame from a salvage auction. 2003, same make, same year as the original. Pulled it on a flatbed to my property and set it in the garage. It's just bare steel right now, no engine, no cab, nothing attached to it but potential. I'm not rebuilding it because I need to prove something. I'm not doing it to reclaim what Silas took or to make some statement about resilience. I'm doing it because building things is the most fundamental thing I know about myself. And no one who has ever tried to use me or dismantle me has managed to touch that. Not Silas, not Roy, not Donna with every guilt-laced word she had in her. I'm doing it because it's what I do. And when it's finished, in 2 years or 5 years or whatever it takes, it'll be mine in every way that matters. Same as the last one was. Roy called me once after everything settled. I almost didn't answer. When I did, he didn't apologize. I hadn't expected him to. What he said instead, after a long silence, was, "You're just a selfish, cold-blooded villain, Damon. You know that?" I thought about it for exactly 1 second. "Yeah," I said. "The one you built." Then I hung up and went back to work. Thanks for reading. I don't check this account often, but for those asking, yeah, I'm good. Better than I've been in a long time, actually. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.